What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we are going to be talking about Sabretooth number 2 by Victor LaValle and Leonard Kirk. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly why some of the mutants that were sent into the hole with Sabretooth are down there, as well as explaining the return of a long-thought-dead Morlock, and more importantly than that, why Krakoa's laws prove that Krakoa is far from perfect. We're going to talk about all this and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, hit that subscribe button. I post multiple videos throughout the week, plus live stream the Blerd Cave every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, so hit that bell button. That way you don't miss anything. With that out of the way, let's talk about Sabretooth number 2.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
Okay, so when last we left off, there were a few mutants who were dumped down into the hole to join Sabretooth in what is a quotey fingers not prison. Remember back during House of X number 6, they said that, oh, Krakoa will have no prisons. And even when you're down there, you're not gonna be able to feel anything. You're not gonna be able to notice anything. You're not really gonna be awake. You're gonna be aware of what's going on around you, but you won't really be able to do anything about it. Well, as it turns out, all of that was bullshit. As we discovered in Sabretooth number 1, Sabretooth has basically been acting and not necessarily moving around. I mean, no one is actually moving around down there. We even see at a later point that they are all, as they were told, they would be in stasis. However, they're able to manipulate and move around, I guess, on some kind of a psionic level, which I guess makes sense considering that Krakoa has some psionic ability as well. Krakoa feeds off of psionic energy, so it would make sense and stand to reason that maybe there is some kind of psionic shenanigans going on here. Now, getting back to the mutants who have been sentenced to the pit. The mutants in question are characters like Melter, Madison Jeffries, Third Eye, Necra, and Aya. And as we are witnessing the sentencing of each of these characters, you may have noticed a cheeky little pink number that resides over each and every one of their heads. A number that is supposed to be psionically present in this particular situation. And that number, I'm gonna go on a limb and say, corresponds with the rule or law of Krakoa that they had broken. The characters of Oya and Necra, they're guilty of breaking Krakoa's second law, murder no man. Something that, as we witness these characters being questioned about it, they don't seem to have any regret about whatever it is that they had done. Necra talks about how long ago she nearly overthrew the United States government, and I don't think that she's being put down there for that. I think this is something else that was going on, but whatever it is, she seemingly made Oya an accomplice to it. We're not really sure exactly what happened, but whatever it is, they killed some people, or at least one person, and whatever the case was, not even Aya seems to be particularly repentant about it either. She even says that I make my own choices. It wasn't Necra that drugged me into this. I do what I want when I want. No one influences me to do anything, and that she would do the same thing again if she had to make the choice all over.
Aya has killed people in the past, so this isn't like it's some kind of a huge character turn for her. Aya has no compunctions about killing people, at least not when she feels like whoever it is that she's killing deserves it. If you go back to the X-Men event Schism, whether it's Generation Hope number 10 or Schism number 3, Aya had no problem whatsoever killing Hellfire Club soldiers who, mind you, at the time, were human.
Now, in the case of Madison Jeffries, the law he broke is respect this sacred land, meaning that he very likely did something that either hurt or harmed Krakoa in some way, shape, form, or fashion, but we're never exactly told what it was that he did. But in regards to that, maybe we can make a guess as to what it was he did, because when we get to the character Melter, he has broken the same law. And in this issue, we discover that he was practicing using his powers. Melter's powers essentially allow him to unleash what is almost like a volcanic-like force that can melt pretty much anything he shoots it at. He can't really control the power as well as he would like, and while he was practicing using his abilities on Krakoa, his powers were actually hitting Krakoa, and Krakoa is a sentient being, not just some island that just floats around aimlessly. Krakoa actually has thoughts and feelings, and for all intents and purposes, a soul. And while he talks about how it was just a simple mistake, everyone else feels he was judged too harshly as well. That brings us to Third Eye. We don't really know what Third Eye did. It's not brought up or even spoken about, but the law he broke was the first Krakoan law, and that is make more mutants. I don't know if it's like some deal where he just completely decided he didn't want to make more mutants, that he just made a conscious effort to say, I'm abstaining from creating more mutants, so to speak. I'm not clapping any cheeks to make any mutants. And I don't think it has anything to do with sexual orientation or anything like that. That one is a tough one to interpret.
Another thing I'm wondering too is whether or not Third Eye's breaking of this sacred Krakoan law could also imply that maybe he inadvertently or maybe directly had a hand in events that might have denied the birth of a mutant child, whether it's killing a pregnant mutant or hurting a pregnant mutant in some way that would cause them to lose a child, or maybe even possibly agreeing to an abortion of a potentially mutant child. Who knows? It's hard to say at this point, but this law is probably the one Krakoan law that has been broken that is not painfully obvious just on words alone. But I'm fairly confident we're going to learn what it truly means within the next issue.
All that aside, now that they're in the hole with Sabretooth, one thing becomes incredibly clear. Sabretooth is not going to be able to exert his will over them as he initially thought he was going to. Sabretooth has been down there for a while, and as far as he is aware, that he thinks he has complete and total control down there. He doesn't though. The other mutants still have their abilities and powers, even though they're technically in a stasis in this hellscape that they were told didn't exist down in the pit. But since they still have their abilities, Third Eye is going to use his. Third Eye's ability allows him to see the reality of what's really going on. As his name implies, he has a hyper awareness of his surroundings that could potentially border on cosmic awareness. He's able to see through the illusion to see exactly what is going on with him. Third Eye is the reason that they know that they're not seeing what they're truly seeing, that they are in fact just hanging from Krakoan vines in the pit, not walking around in a hellscape or sitting in a prison cell as they initially thought. Third Eye is also able to see something, a connection that he could potentially use to get them out of the pit. And this is a connection between the characters of Sabretooth and Mole. Some of you may remember Mole as a character who was introduced back in X Factor number 51 in 1990. Mole is one of the only survivors of the Mutant Massacre, the same Mutant Massacre that saw the original Marauders destroy, presumably, all of the Morlocks in their sewer tunnel dwelling. And Sabretooth discovered at a later point that Mole had actually survived, as well as another character by the name of Chicken Wings, an error that Sabretooth returned to the sewers to correct. However, he was unable to get his hands on Mole due to Mole's ability to, for all intents and purposes, dig up everything around him. Though not by actual digging. Mole can unleash an energy force around him that basically digs up everything for him. He can dig as much as he wants. He can even close up the holes that he digs around him, keeping anyone from being able to follow, which is what he did when Sabretooth tried to kill him in the sewers. Third Eye has reached out to Mole because Mole technically has some skin in this game. Third Eye reveals to Mole that they're trapped in the hole with Sabretooth, and he is promising to hurt them. And if anyone would understand exactly why that's a bad thing, it would be Mole.
Now, the reason why Third Eye was able to make this connection in regards to Sabretooth and Mole is because Mole was actually fresh in Sabretooth's head, as we saw in the previous issue of Sabretooth number 1, when Victor Creed was imposing all of the different psionic versions of himself, like the spacefaring Corsair version of Sabretooth. It was actually the Corsair version of Sabretooth that had visited Mole in the previous issue. This is why when Third Eye astrally projects himself to ask Mole to help them in regards to Sabretooth, this is why he's not as surprised as some might expect him to be that this is happening.
Now, Mole was initially thought dead, or rather presumed dead. It turns out he was never killed. It was originally thought that eventually at some point Sabretooth did catch up with him, but apparently that was never actually the case. He got away and he pretty much had lived in hiding up until Xavier put the call out to all mutants that Krakoa was a thing. Now, Mole is gonna try his best to get other people involved. He actually goes right to probably what I would think is one of the best sources for this. The first person that he tries to get help from is Apocalypse, character we really haven't seen around very much as of late since Ten of Swords, but Apocalypse is too busy. All of the other characters that Mole tries to reach out to, characters like Storm, Wolverine, Archangel, they're all busy. Everybody kind of has their own thing going on right now, and none of them are able to help Mole with what it is that he needs. And Mole would likely be the best person to do this. He even says it himself, like, I can't get help from anyone else, I'm just gonna do this myself. And he would be the best person to do it, because if they are buried in a pit, who better to dig it up than a Mole? Now, when Mole gets down there, he may find a situation that he wasn't expecting. He knows that Sabretooth is down there. However, I don't think he's prepared for what Sabretooth has finally realized. Sabretooth has made it clear that he doesn't like them. He wanted to hurt them. He wanted to kill them as soon as each and every one of those mutants came down to his domain. But Sabretooth has realized after hearing the stories of Melter and presumably some of the other characters that are down there in the pit with him, he's realized that they're not his enemy. They're not the people he should be taking his frustrations out on, and the people who deserve to be punished by him are still sitting there up top, sitting pretty on the Quiet Council. Sabretooth has given up on trying to hurt the people down there in the pit with him. He no longer wants to do that. He's going to do the very thing that we talked about in the previous issue, something that I posited was going to happen. He's preparing a scheme to get them out of the pit. And I love what he says here towards the end of it, talking about how a lot of people think that he's too stupid to plan and scheme. It's the last thing that they think before he guts them, and that Satan recruited 5 angels in his revolt against God, and he thinks they can get free and make the gods, i.e. the Quiet Council, pay for what they've done to both him as well as Necra, Melter, Madison Jeffries, Oya, and Third Eye. This issue was pretty freaking solid, if I say so myself. I'm loving what they're doing with Sabretooth, getting him back to his more cerebral roots that I personally appreciate. I like smart Sabretooth. I love it when Sabretooth is the cerebral assassin, not some meathead that doesn't know how to put 2 coherent sentences together, especially if he sees Wolverine. I like it when Sabretooth is a more calculating villain, and I like that he's actually getting back to that. This is one of the things I talked about when the series was originally announced almost a year ago. That was what I wanted. I wanted to see the return of the cerebral assassin, and it looks like we're getting it.
Also, I'm calling it right now. I know a lot of people want to think that this cat is probably some darker, more sinister version of Victor Creed. I think we've already seen those sinister versions. We're literally looking at them right now, but something tells me this cat might just be the Axis version of Sabretooth, just kind of lying and waiting, watching everything play out. I don't know. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but if they reveal that that cat is not as evil as a lot of people are already trying to claim that it is, I'm thinking this is what it's gonna wind up being.
But as for how they're going to get out, I'm pretty sure Mole is going to play a part in it, but knowing the history between Sabretooth and Mole, how Mole very likely still holds Chicken Wing's death against him, something tells me that Mole and Sabretooth are going to have some kind of a back and forth, some kind of a meeting of the minds, a come to Jesus, if you will, to get past the things that Sabretooth did to him and his friends, as well as maybe find a way, I don't know, whether or not Mole will forgive him, but I feel like there's a forgiveness arc somewhere in this, somewhere down the road. But anyways, let me know what you thought about Sabretooth number 2. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.